Well, welcome back. It's time now to build the back of this frame assembly. And what we're going to do is do it a little bit different than we did our previous cabinet. In the previous cabinet, we built it what I call in situ, or built in place, or built on location. This one, we're going to build it very much like the face frame. We're going to take the dimensions, cut the pieces, build it as a separate unit, and then install it all as one piece. Let me show you why we're going to do that. Okay, so the first step in getting the parts cut to size for the rear frame is to get the dimension from the top of the floor of the cabinet to the top of the face frame. And I've done that, and I'm just checking this board to make sure that it comes exactly flush, and yep, we're spot on there. So this is now set. I have a stop block set on my miter saw, and I'll be cutting 4 of these vertical members. We can call them stiles for lack of better terminology. The other important thing is to make sure that I get this positioned exactly right. And you'll see I'm using the face frame to determine the positioning of the pieces in the back frame. And the reason for that is because the rear mounting bracket of my drawer slide needs to attach to this piece of wood. And then once that's done, I can get this in position. I'll use a clamp to hold it into place. And then I can get the dimensions between the vertical parts to cut the horizontal pieces, and we'll have all of the rear face frame pieces cut out and ready to go. All right, now as I go along, what I'm doing is I'm making some marks on these boards so I'll know how everything is supposed to be matched up when I get back over to the workbench to glue this all together. But for now, I'm just going to clamp these into place temporarily so that I can get the dimensions of the horizontal pieces. All right, and here's the last piece. If we cut these 2 pieces, top and bottom, at precisely the same length, and our assembly is square from this side to this side, this top piece should give us a pretty tight fit. And let's see how we did. Yeah. I'd say we're within a 64th of an inch, so I'd say that's pretty doggone good. That's going to work. All right, so I'm going to double check, make sure all my labeling is in place, and then we're going to go to the workbench to assemble this face frame. All right, I've got all of the frame pieces out of the cabinet laid out here on top of my outfeed table, and I'm getting ready to assemble this. By the way, if you ever want to do just a little gut check on squareness before you put things together, like on this frame, all I did was put a clamp here just to compress the pieces together, and you know the trick of just measuring corner to corner, and as long as you've got equal measurements, then you're square. And so, that's perfect. I got lucky. All right, so now what I need to do is I need to drill for the pocket holes. Now, I've mentioned before, I don't really like to see pocket holes inside a cabinet. If you were to open the doors on that vanity cabinet and look at the back, this is the side you would see. So what I want to do, I'm going to take this clamp off, and what I want to do is I want to flip this whole thing over. And of course it's not assembled yet, and I don't want to get anything out of order, so I'm just going to take it one piece at a time, flip, flip, flip. Need a little space here. And then flip, 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 and flip. And now we've basically got this turned over on its back, ready to go. So what I need to do now is I need to mark where I'm going to drill my pocket holes. Now, I've been using pocket holes on this project, and a couple of people said, can we see your pocket hole setup? It's upstairs, and I'm more than happy to show it to you. You'll just have to forgive the mess upstairs, but let's go take a look. All right, here's my pocket holes set up. I've got the pieces mounted to a board on top of a mobile table upstairs in my shop. This is an older Craig setup, but it still works great. It just doesn't have the dust collection like the newer one has. I also have the Craig supplied pieces here where you can lay boards across and keep them flat. I also set up a couple of pieces here so that when I'm doing smaller assemblies, I can just do them right here by clamping them down and doing the joinery. I'm going to do the joinery downstairs on this, but this is my setup. When I'm done drilling pocket holes, I can just roll this table to the side out of the way. All right, now I don't worry too terribly much about the absolute placement of the holes. This is a 3.5 inch wide board, so basically I'm just going to kind of center it by eye and then use these two outside holes, these guides, to drill the holes. And there we go. Simple as that. We'll drill them in the other end. Looks pretty good. Ready to glue this up now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue on the pieces. I'm going to clamp everything together and get it nice and square. And then I'm going to drive the pocket hole screws. And that will actually then tie everything together. All right, now I've got a straight board here that I'm going to use to push everything up with. And then I'm going to just push these pieces together and get them lined up. I'm going to very lightly clamp this and square up this end. And then I can lightly clamp this together and get these pieces squared away. Make sure everything is flush. All right. And before we go any further, I want to check this for square. Good shape there. Now I'll tighten these clamps down a little bit. Then I'm going to use these big heavy boards here, almost like cauls. And that's going to keep the face frame flat. I know this looks rough on one side, but the other side has been jointed flat. Now with a little luck, everything will stay down flat, and I can drive in the pocket screws. And there we go. We'll let that set up for a little bit. And our rear frame will be complete, and it'll be time to attach it. A little bit more work inside there, and we'll be ready to go. All right, now I have moved all of the components off of those temporary work tables back over here on top of my outfeed table for the final assembly. Got the base here, and this is the solid panel that's going to go at this end, which will be up against the wall. I've got the other components down here ready to go. I've laid out some clamps. I've marked a line here so I'll know exactly where to put the glue, and we're ready to glue up. Now you don't need any real fancy cauls to apply pressure to the center. I've got clamps set up to clamp this on either end. And then what I will do is I've got a board here that I'm going to clamp in place with this little spacer between this and the end panel. Then when I clamp it on the ends, it'll put a little pressure in the middle, and we'll get a nice tight clamp up. And this positioning here is quite easy because all we're doing is really just lining up the two ends. It looks good. All right, I'll let that set up for a little bit, and then we will put the solid panel down here. All right, now this panel has set up for a few minutes. Now I'm going to glue this other panel into place. I'm just kind of keeping the glue, frankly, away from the very edge of that miter so that no squeeze out will interfere potentially with my miter joint later on. And I should be able to just use the same clamp setup. And I'm going to use my same little scrap of miter to get this corner lined up perfectly. Now right now all I'm doing is just making sure this thing doesn't fall over so I can test my miter joint down here. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. All right. Now the second panel is up. Just double check the square on that. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, let that set up for a few minutes. With the end panels both attached, glued in place, I can now take the rear frame and insert it and attach this permanently. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run some glue around the edges, and then I've got pocket holes here in a few locations to hold the thing together. I'll clamp it first to make sure the pocket holes don't cause the boards to move, and this side will be done. And there we go. All right, well, it's a new day and I'm ready to go. Ready to attach the face frame to this cabinet. Now what I've done is I've cut a couple of blocks here just to the right size and stood them up here. And they're just to help me get the position of the face frame from a height standpoint. Where I want this is the face frame flush with the bottom of the cabinet. That'll work like a third set of hands to help me position that from a height standpoint, and then I can just work on the side-to-side positioning of the face frame itself. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread glue on these three edges. I'm going to let it tack up for a couple of minutes so it's not so slippery. And then I'm going to put the face frame in place and clamp it down. Now there's still a couple of things left to do to this cabinet before I can start finishing it and working on the other pieces, doors and drawers primarily. First thing I want to do is I want to run a brace between this back frame to the face frame right across here. That'll give me support for the sink side of the top. I'm also going to run a small support right across here. And I'm using no mechanical fasteners on the face frame simply because it would be difficult to do it and to hide the fasteners. So what I'm going to do is, out of sight behind the face frame, I'm going to glue in a couple of corner blocks on this panel and on this panel just to give it a little additional rigidity, particularly where you're opening doors or drawers. So I'm ready to go. Let's start this glue up. Well, our cabinet is essentially finished. Well, except for doors and drawers. Now, I've been getting a lot of questions about building doors so that they stay flat and they fit nice and they're nice and square, and same thing with drawers. And it really all starts with the lumber. So in the next video, I'm going to start by going through the process of milling down lumber to get really nice, straight, stable pieces to build doors and drawers out of. Here's an example. This is a piece of walnut that I'm going to be working with. This is 8/4 thick, about 8 inches wide, and as you can see, it's pretty rough. But when we go through the steps, we're going to wind up with some nice, beautiful pieces that are going to be used throughout the decorative part of this vanity. So be sure and come back for the next video, and in the meantime, I really appreciate you watching this one.